In this edition of Black Agenda Television, Bruce Dixon explores an enduring aspect of President Obama's legacy, the closing of hundreds of mostly black schools and the firing of thousands of African American teachers in the drive to privatize education. A new film takes us on a journey with political prisoner Mumia Abu-Jamal and will examine the U.S. role in the deaths of 6 million people in eastern Congo, the greatest genocide since World War II. But first, the great Frederick Douglass said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Maybe that's why Black America has been losing ground, especially in the last 4 years. Glen Ford says, "If you demand nothing, you get nothing."
We at Black Agenda Report coined the term Black Misleadership class to describe those who claim to fight for the interests of African Americans, but really don't represent anyone except their own narrow little class. This Black Misleadership class is very much concerned with seeing its members get ahead in business and politics, but their real fixation is power. They want to be near people in power and useful to those who have real power in society. In that sense, they are more like power groupies than leaders. They treasure meetings at the White House so that everyone will see them as having access to power, but they wield no power themselves. And if they ever did get a taste of power, they would never use it to benefit the masses of black folks. That's why the Black Misleadership class has no political agenda beyond the symbolism of seeing black faces in high places. For them, that's what politics is all about, symbolism and proximity to power. Since they believe in nothing, the misleadership class has great difficulties formulating demands, except, of course, politely requesting that more members of their class be appointed to high positions. And since 2008, they have shown themselves to be totally incapable of making even the most modest request of power. In fact, it has been so long since the Black Misleadership class made any substantial demands of power, they appear to have forgotten how. Last month, the NAACP, the Urban League, Al Sharpton, and an assortment of other self-appointed leaders met behind closed doors for 4 hours and came up with a bunch of bland generalities on education, voting rights, healthcare, the economy, and the criminal justice system. Nothing even remotely resembling the beginnings of demands, just a list of talking points that sounded like it came straight out of Barack Obama's White House, and probably did. That's how the Black Misleadership class plans to waste the next 4 years, pretending to be getting ready to finally make some demands or even rev up a movement, but never quite getting around to it. They are absolutely useless. And so, we at Black Agenda Report have decided it's time to coin a new term, the February 30th movement. The February 30th movement is the brainchild of our poet-in-residence, Raymond Nat Turner. Of course, there is no such day as February 30th, and so the February 30th movement never comes. Just as the time will never come when the NAACP, the Urban League, and Al Sharpton and the rest of the Black Misleadership class will actually confront the first black president of the United States. They will posture and hold periodic meetings to bemoan how African Americans have been set back generations in the last 4 years, but they will not speak truth to power. Malcolm X was quite familiar with false black leaders and their phony movements. He described them as Negroes of national stature that never incited or excited you. They controlled you, they contained you, they kept you on the plantation. 50 years later, they are still with us, still promising to put together a real movement for social change when February 30th rolls around.
Many of those who do engage in struggle for fundamental social change wind up in the vast American prison system, like Mumia Abu-Jamal. A new film set for release in February explores the life and profound impact of the nation's best-known political prisoner. The film features a cast of strugglers and thinkers, including Ruby Dee, Cornel West, Angela Davis, Hurricane Carter, Michelle Alexander, and the poetess Alice Walker.
Mumia Abu-Jamal is one of the lost souls of the revolution.
Mumia, how are you dealing with all of this darkness and despair and despondency and so forth? He said, let me write about it. I'll tell the truth about it. It's a living hell. It's a nightmare.
They have moved heaven and earth to stop his voice being heard in the United States.
Anybody who has the ability to draw a crowd with their voice and then speak truth, oh my God.
Mumia Abu-Jamal is a revolutionary person. So he's like a guerrilla in the jungle, in a tent in the rain, writing to the community with next to nothing.
So here we have somebody who defiantly says, yes, I'm not only a journalist, but I'm a revolutionary journalist. And no, I don't agree with anything that you're doing. And yes, I have an international platform. Interestingly enough, a platform that I never used to talk about my own case. They want him ground up.
Powerful governments like to control. They love to control. And they love to silence people. They cannot silence Mumia.
When you're pushing the lie, the truth is very threatening.
You come through at a time that the technology was there that could go around the world. And one day we would find out that he was the voice of America. The voice of America is a fraud.
Since 1996, at least 6 million people have died in the eastern Congo, half of them children below the age of 5. It's by far the biggest slaughter of human beings since the Second World War. The corporate media would have you believe that this Holocaust is the result of African people's inability to govern themselves. But it is the United States that has armed, financed, and protected those most responsible for the genocide. Black Agenda Television's Glen Ford spoke with Kambali Musavuli and Maurice Carney of Friends of Congo.
Mr. Musavuli, Mr. Carney, welcome to Black Agenda Television. In the last 16 years, 6 million people have died in the Congo. Most Americans don't know that, and if they do, they have no idea why it has happened and what role the United States, their own country, has played in it.
Yes, this is true. And it's important for your viewing audience to understand why Congo matters. Congo is located in the heart of Africa. It straddles the equator. It's bordered by 9 other African countries. The population of about estimated 70 million people. Congo really is the fulcrum on which the African continent swings. So whatever happens in the Congo reverberates throughout the entire continent. In fact, former South African President Thabo Mbeki said flatly, there is no new Africa without a new Congo. So what transpires in the Congo is vital to the future of the African continent. And there has been tremendous suffering in the Congo since 1996. The UN says it's the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. And as we delve deeper into it, we'll see the role that U.S. foreign policy plays, which had its birth in the region of late in the Clinton administration, where President Clinton, with Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs Susan Rice, developed what they call policy of the new breed of African leaders, or Renaissance leaders. These are leaders that the U.S. administration will present to the world as the future leaders of Africa that we ought to respect, support, and look up to. And these leaders, interestingly enough, have a few things in common. One, they came to power through the barrel of the gun. 2, they've invaded another African country. 3, and they have the blood of millions of Africans on their hands. We're talking about leaders such as Paul Kagame in Rwanda, Yoweri Museveni in Uganda. We also have the late Meles Zenawi in Ethiopia. So you have a situation where U.S. policy is presenting these criminals, war criminals who've committed crimes against humanity to the world as Renaissance leaders and future leaders of Africa. So I'm sure we'll delve more into that, but that's where the policy had its roots, the current policy anyways, with the Clinton administration and the Renaissance leaders of Africa.
And in fact, those three leaders have been called by some the unholy trinity. But they couldn't be going about their depredations in Africa without the financing and the weapons provided by the United States.
Yes, and he has caused the deaths of an estimated 6 million people. So since 1996, what Congo has seen is that Rwanda and Uganda invaded the Congo, and they haven't left. No, they have been in the Congo since 1996. Officially withdrew in 2002 in wars of proxy war, looting the resources, displacing the population, raping the women.
Well, let's talk about rape. Rape has occurred in the Congo at an unprecedented level. And yet we saw the spectacle when Susan Rice was being considered as Secretary of State. 12 female members of the Congressional Black Caucus circling the wagons around this person who has constantly shielded the people who were doing the rape from sanction and punishment. What does that say about the Congressional Black Caucus? And you might want to put forward a larger opinion in terms of how Black America is relating to this Holocaust.
I believe we've lost what Dr. King and others fought for, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And the lives of Black people around the world are devalued. Today, we have Black leaders who are in high positions who could do something to stop the suffering of Blacks in Africa. So we have hundreds of thousands of women who have been raped, but we have to also understand the context of that. There are two types of rape taking place in the Congo. The rape of the women, the people in the region, and also the rape of the land. Those two are inextricably linked. You have Black faces here putting cover for dictators in Africa, and no one is challenging them for that. You know, it's how can one explain that Susan Rice worked for IntelliBridge, a PR lobbying firm that is doing work for the Rwandan government, and today she's the ambassador, watering down UN reports, documenting the atrocities taking there. But here the discussion has been around race. Can you imagine how difficult it is for me as a Congolese to share with the American people? It's about the policy she's making that is causing the suffering of Black people in Africa, specifically in the Congo. I believe it can be stopped. It can be stopped with world support for people to be clear that in order for us to have the basic things that we use, such as our cell phones, our laptops, our DVD players, 6 million Congolese had to die. Why am I saying that? There was a mineral found in the Congo in 1996 called coltan. Coltan is found in virtually every electronic device. Even Xbox and PlayStation has coltan in it. So as people are coming out of the holiday, they are purchasing all these toys and electronic devices. They don't know half of them are children under the age of 5. So we have 3 million children in the Congo who had to die so that our phone could vibrate, so we could watch TV, so we could use the game consoles. But the world does not know because we are benefiting from the suffering of the Congolese.
Well, we haven't talked about the role of President Kabila, the president of Congo. He's been around through most of the years in which millions of people have died. Is he culpable in some way?
Absolutely. But you have to look at it in the context. Joseph Kabila came through the first invasion of the Congo of Rwanda and Uganda. Joseph Kabila, the current president of the Congo, was the aide of the current Minister of Defense in Rwanda. So as they invaded the Congo, to they topple a dictatorial regime in the Congo of Joseph Mobutu and installed a new leader called Laurent Désiré Kabila in 1997. Laurent Désiré Kabila, after taking power, he noticed, or I should say, he called out Rwanda and Uganda for stealing Congo's resources and asked them to leave. In 98, they left. In a matter of months, they reinvaded the Congo. As they reinvaded the Congo, that engaged other African nations. It's estimated about 11 African nations came into the Congo during the battle of 1998, fighting on two sides, the side of the Laurent Kabila government and the side of the Rwanda and Uganda government. During the time of the fight in 2001, Laurent Kabila was assassinated. We still do not have all the truth of what happened there. He was assassinated on January 16th, 2001, a day before the anniversary of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. So somebody was sending a message to the Congolese people during that killing. And as he was assassinated, his so-called son, Joseph Kabila, came into power. Why it's important to mention that? Congo had a constitution. When a president dies, the head of the Senate becomes the president. How did the son of a rebel leader who came into a country and a new constitution in place become the president of a sovereign nation? Congo is not a monarchy. So there was a coup d'etat, as I put it, where Joseph Kabila was installed, but he is the puppet, and the puppeteer is in Kigali, and that is Paul Kagame, given he is part of the force that took over the country, and he hasn't held accountable to the full extent invading nations.
And what has the reaction of the Congolese people been?
There is the Congolese people do not see itself within the government. What I can now move toward is the elections that took place in the Congo. In 2006, there was an election. The Congolese people went in and voted, and their voice was not heard. In 2011, the same thing happened, where people were hoping that finally their voices will be heard. There was change in the constitution to help in facilitating the installation of Joseph Kabila. People fought it, where for a period of a year within the Congo, there were protests on a weekly basis against the electoral fraud that was happening. But unfortunately, the movement of the people was not supported. And Kabila was again installed in December of 2011 as the so-called winner of the election. And the people, seeing that again, that their voice was not heard, that the government that they have does not represent them.
So it seems then that the Congolese people have to fight on multiple fronts. One, to resist a government that they believe is illegitimate and does not represent them. Number two, an invasion by at least two countries, foreign countries. And number three, the overarching power of the United States.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because for people to understand what Congolese face, there are a few principles that have been at play since the modern founding of the Congo in 1884, 1885 at a Berlin conference, when the continent of Africa was divided up among European nations and Congo was given to King Leopold II as his own personal property. One is that Congo's challenge has been both internal and external. And we've seen that throughout the history from 1885 to the present. Two, the pursuit of the Congolese people since that time has been to control and determine their own affairs. That's been the central pursuit of the Congolese people. And this probably was best exemplified with Patrice Emery Lumumba when Congolese elected him as prime minister in 1960. And he stood up and he told the world that we want Congo's wealth to be utilized for the benefit of Congolese in particular and for Africans in general. When he said that, it sent shudders through the West, because what he signaled to them was that we're going to control these resources. Belgium, you're not going to control it. America, you're not going to control it. United Kingdom, you're not going to control it. So as a result of that, within weeks, he was deposed by the CIA, and the CIA chief of station at the time, Larry Devlin, wrote a book that documented and laid out how they overthrew Lumumba. The book was called Chief of Station Congo. And within months, he was assassinated by the Belgians, the US, and Congolese sycophants. And Belgium apologized in 1982 for the assassination of Lumumba. But the challenge for the Congo has been internal and external, and the pursuit of the Congolese people has been to control and determine their own affairs. And they've reached out to people throughout the globe to join them in this pursuit, because Congo's challenge is not just a Congolese issue or an African issue, but as Che Guevara said when he went there in '65, it's a worldwide issue.
And so, since the United States has been so central to the pain of the Congolese people, what can the American people do to make amends?
Oh yes, there are a few things Americans can do. One, at least for us, we believe people need to educate themselves around the situation. So what they can do is to go to congojustice.org, watch a film about the situation in Congo, laying out the issue. The second one that American people need to do is to hold the government accountable. They can do that by contacting the legislators, the senators and congresspeople, ask them to enforce the Obama law. What is the Obama law? The Democratic Republic of Congo Relief, Security, Democracy Promotion Act. It was written by Obama when he was a senator. He was passed in 2006 and signed by George Bush, and this law hasn't been enforced. The law says that if Congo's neighbors are destabilizing the Congo, we are now going to fund the government. Right now, Rwanda and Uganda are training, equipping, arming rebels in the Congo. Our taxpayers' money is going to them. When you're contacting your legislator, ask them to enforce Public Law 109456. And the last one is support. We believe that it's going to be Congolese who are going to change it. It's a young nation. The youth of the Congo are ready to transform that country, and they need your support. So they need to be solidarity. So while you put pressure on your government, support the youth movement in the Congo, where the young Congolese are trying to transform the nation. And you can go to our website, friendsofthecongo.org, and you'll get information about how to get in touch with us and connect with people in the Congo. Because when the youth of the Congo are able to control that country, they will be coming to the Congo, seeing the beautiful Congo River, learning more about the culture, and enjoy the beauty of the heart of Africa.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for educating us on Black Agenda Television.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In cities across the nation, many hundreds of mostly black schools have been closed down under the pretext of reforming public education. In the process, black teachers have been fired in huge numbers, often to make way for charter schools and corporate-style education. The pace of school closings and teacher firings has increased exponentially under President Obama, as Bruce Dixon explains.
The current nationwide wave of public school closings and teacher firings, which are concentrated in poor and non-white communities around the country, is directly traceable to President Obama's Race to the Top program. Beginning in the 1980s, deep right-wing pockets like the Bradley and Walton Family Foundation spent billions to create and fund fake grassroots movements for what the media now call education reform. They churned out academic studies and blizzards of media hype, first for vouchers and later on for charter schools, and for what's become a whole panoply of privatization-oriented education reforms. Those billions paid off with the 2001 passage of the No Child Left Behind Act, which made the corporate agenda of undermining and ultimately privatizing public education national policy. Those standardized test scores were long known to prove little aside from student family income, test scores suddenly became the gold standard for judging teacher and school performance. School districts were required under No Child Left Behind to purchase and give dozens of costly, meaningless tests, and to publish lists ranking their own schools and teachers as failing whenever test scores were low, which again was mostly wherever students were poor. Amid torrents of blame the teachers propaganda, the so-called failing schools were required to hire expensive contractors with cockeyed run-the-school-like-a-business remedies and even more crackpot tests, spawning overnight an entire industry of jackleg educational consultants. When test scores still didn't rise, many schools were forced to close, opening the way for chains of profitable charter schools. Results in the classrooms of poor neighborhoods around the country were devastating, where in 1987-88, the number of years that the largest cohort of teachers had been in the classrooms was 10 years, by 2008, the biggest block of teachers were in their very first year. Tens of thousands of experienced, qualified, dedicated teachers had been run out of the classrooms. This was the state of public education when President Obama walked into the White House door, a result of bipartisan collusion between Republicans and Democrats. But instead of beginning to turn it around, President Obama chose instead to double down. President Obama appointed Chicago Schools CEO Arne Duncan Secretary of Education. A champion of privatization, Duncan had closed dozens of Chicago public schools, many on short notice, some at the apparent behest of gentrifying real estate developers. Duncan fired so many veteran black Chicago teachers to fill their slots with mostly white rookies that teachers sued him for racial discrimination in federal court and won. Duncan even introduced military charter schools in Chicago, in one case handing over a West Side middle school to the U.S. Marine Corps. Secretary Duncan at his side, Barack Obama introduced Race to the Top, his administration's signature education policy, drawn up by the Bill and Melinda Gates, the Eli Broad, Boeing, Walton family, and other right-wing foundations. Under Race to the Top, states and school districts bid against each other for many of the same education dollars they used to receive as a matter of course. The winning districts are those quickest to apply Race to the Top's 4 official solutions to the greatest proportion of their so-called failing schools. Race to the Top's 4 federally mandated strategies are school transformations, school turnarounds, school restarts, and school closures. Race to the Top defines a school transformation as firing the principal and up to 50% of the teachers, replacing them with temps and newbies, and hiring expensive consultants, often the same folks who drafted Race to the Top's guidelines or their cronies, to redesign curriculum and personnel policies. Transformed schools tie teachers' jobs to test scores. That is what causes the nationwide epidemic of cheating scandals. They lengthen school days with no extra pay, they cut wages and benefits, and of course, they administer lots of costly and useless tests. Race to the Top calls its second remedy a school turnaround. School turnarounds are exactly the same as school transformations, except that where transformations fire up to 50%, turnaround schools must fire at least 50% of school staff, bring in the same high-priced, run-the-school-like-a-business consultants, administer more tests, and all the rests. School restarts are the third Race to the Top solution. Close the public school in a school restart, and you reopen a new one with new staff and the connected consultants under the management of a private corporation, usually a charter school, which can use public money to hire even less qualified teachers, can pick and choose the students it serves, and often generates handsome private profits in the name of choice. Race to the Top's 4th is school closure. In a school closing, you fire the staff, you padlock the school doors, and you let families take their chances on the free market or find another public school if they can. The states and school districts quickest to carry out the most transformations, the most turnarounds, the most restarts, and the most school closings are the ones who get to keep or increase their levels of federal funding. Those who drag their feet lose their federal education dollars. The administration says that it aims to reform at least 5,000 public schools in this manner nationwide in Obama's first term. But even if it took 2 terms to do this, Barack Obama is already set to go down in history as the president who's already done more to dismantle, to destroy, and to privatize public education than any president before him. And he's still got 4 more years. Barack Obama is the diseducation president for black.
We also call your attention to Glen Ford's groundbreaking speech on the corporate assault on public education, part of the treasure trove of information for liberation available on our websites. Go to blackagendatv.com and check out all of the movers, shakers, and thinkers that attended our 6th anniversary event at New York's historic Riverside Church. And every Wednesday, visit us at blackagendareport.com for a new and provocative issue of our magazine. Black Agenda Report is the place for news, commentary, and analysis from the Black left. For Black Agenda TV, I'm Ayanna Jones.